So, earlier this summer, while my partner Milt and I were visiting family back in New England, we were staying with a brother who lives in Boston, so we decided to play tourist. We even managed to find the new UUA headquarters, by the way. That was a trick. Now, when I was a young mother, I lived on the Fens, close enough to hear the crowds during Red Sox home games, but I never quite managed to get over to the infamous park. So because Milt is a baseball fan, we signed up to tour Fenway, where, when our guide introduced himself as a retired music teacher, I felt compelled to share with him an experience I had with a certain congregation in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Some of you may recall that October Sunday that your barbershop quartet surprised me by singing, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Anybody remember that? Anyway, there I was, getting ready to deliver my sermon, having carefully orchestrated the entire service, hymns, readings, children's piece, so that everything fit together. And here were four men, obviously and obliviously throwing a monkey wrench baseball bat into everything. And I confess that was one and perhaps the only time I was ever rendered speechless. Who knew I'd get a chance to return to your pulpit and get another shot at it? How delicious is that? The tour guide laughed at my story and offered, "Well, no wonder baseball has been called a religion." A religion? Really? Really? Stay with me here. New brain research shows that when we humans are intensely watching someone do something, our brains react as if we too were doing the same thing. It releases the same chemicals in our neural net and affects the same muscles. We really literally get into it. The roar of the fans in Fenway Park is perhaps a release of that energy from those who are participating in the game without actually being down on the field. No wonder sports activities have been deemed the worship service of today's culture. It's kind of a mass focus on that which is deemed worthy, complete with ritual foods that constitute a communion of sorts, if Cracker Jacks and colas do that for you the way bread and wine is said to. Cosmologist Brian Swim describes this participatory experience by using an example from the natural world. When we go for a walk in the woods and truly pay attention to a tree, we literally exchange photons with that tree. We are changed, and that tree is changed by our interchange, so that we come back home radiating forest. To me, this reflects Emerson's insight and experience that if you agree with me, I may yet be wrong, but if the elm tree says the same thing, I know I am right. That phrase from Emerson has always intrigued me and affirmed my own nature-based experience of the sacred, the holy, the whole. And because I so strongly identify with our transcendentalist Unitarian heritage, I have always invited UU congregants to share in that process with me. And I do that by creating and conducting a series of writing workshops I called Seminarium. Does anybody remember that? Yes. That's why when I was your interim minister, I was refining that process into a product, a book that was requested by Skinner House Books, which is our in-house UU publisher. It's reprinted my first book a couple of times. As it turned out, Skinner House was not interested in the manuscript after all, and so I put it away and brought it out after I retired as this, Light Year, a seasonal primer for spiritual focus. The book consists of carefully designed topics that focus on the changing seasons and invites readers into an awareness of how our light, the life of our sun, It affects and informs our spiritual lives. And the sample writings included in the back of the book come from 16 participants here at High Plains Church, some of whom are here this morning, and which is why I donated a copy to your church library several years ago in their honor. So this morning, because the seasons are officially changing with this Labor Day weekend, I want to explore that favorite summer pastime, baseball. For after all, you kind of asked for it. And you know what they say about being careful. It's too late. So let baseball be as a working metaphor for the most pressing issue of our era in human history, climate change. If you listen to Democracy Now! On viewer-supported Link or Free Speech TV, you heard Amy Goodman report this week, quote, "A new draft of a United Nations report warns climate change could become irreversible if greenhouse gas emissions go unchecked." The report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, obtained by media outlets, says human-driven warming has already fueled extreme heat and rains as temperatures have risen 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit since pre-industrial times. While the report says it could still be possible to cap warming at the globally agreed-upon limit of 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, it warns that a continued rise in emissions could cause an 8-degree rise in the coming decades, prompting mass extinction and catastrophic floods. If global warming is to be adequately contained, the report says, at least 3/4 of the known fossil fuel reserves must remain in the ground. So let me get my preaching 2 cents worth in right now. Our English word ecology and economy both come from the singular root ekos, which is Greek for home. And I submit unto you that any economic activity that threatens the ecosystems of our home planet is insane, immoral, and ought to be deemed illegal. For just as the cotton-based economy of the pre-Civil War era did not justify slavery, the fossil fuel-based economy of today does not justify enslaving the living earth. Yet the fossil fuel industry is determined to dig up, frack for, drill down to, and burn every last ounce of CO2 releasing coal, oil, and natural gas for its bottom line of profit. The real bottom line is this: we need to start leaving the rest of the reserves in the ground. We can't burn anymore if we hope to have a viable planet. Science is very clear on this. 350 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere is our limit if life as we know it is to survive. We passed 400 parts per million last summer. Dealing with this new reality requires a radical religious response. And if baseball is indeed a religion, as my tour guide suggested, then we are watching a game in which a little league team is up against a team composed of major league players. Let's play this out, shall we? It is the bottom of the 6th inning. The little leaguers are up at bat with 2 outs. The score is, say 20-2, not in their favor. The team consists of representatives from the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign, 350.org's divestment from fossil fuel campaign. The UUA has just divested its portfolio from fossil fuels, including my pension. It includes Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a nonpartisan grassroots movement committed to putting a price on carbon. It includes the World Wildlife Federation, Earth Justice, Natural Resource Defense Council, Idle No More's, Indigenous Peoples, the solar and wind industry, our Children's Trust, and members of the cast of HBO's Years of Living Dangerously. Anybody see that? And I could swear that's Neil deGrasse Tyson down in the dugout. Which makes sense if you remember what he said during his remake of Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Quote, "We are dumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at a rate the Earth has not seen since the great climate catastrophes of the past, the ones that led to mass extinctions. We just can't seem to break our addiction to burning fossil fuels that will bring back the climate last seen by the dinosaurs. A climate that will drown our coastal cities and wreak havoc on the environment and our ability to feed ourselves. The dinosaurs never saw that asteroid coming. What's our excuse?" He asked that on Fox TV. The answer to that excuse lies in the outfield lineup. Take a good look at it if you dare. On the pitching mound is the petroleum industry. Catching are the Koch brothers with their refineries. On first base, the automotive industry and its gas-guzzling cars. Second base, agribusiness with its fertilizers and pesticides. Third base, public utility commissions. Shortstop, natural gas industry that wants to be our false savior. Center field, coal industry, the whole process from mountaintop removal to ash pits, blowing toxic waste over the Indian reservations. In right field, tar sands is trying to get into the game. While running around on the field like a chicken with its head cut off is the team mascot, epitomized as the EPA, frantic to discern which team it is rooting for at any given moment. The coaching staff is ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council that drafts model legislation for the states. They are committed to rolling back state renewable energy standards across the country. Congress is personified by the baseball commissioner, bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry, though some of its members seem compelled to spend some time in the stands hawking stale buns and warm beer in a sham effort to please and appease the people who ostensibly vote for them. The umpires represent the Supreme Court. In the VIP box sits Wall Street in air-conditioned comfort, sipping carbon cocktails and staving off the oncoming reality of stranded fossil fuel assets. And in the press box, corporate-controlled media reports what their sponsors want the public to hear rather than connecting dots on what's going on the field. But down in the stands, the fans are pumping photons as they watch the action firsthand. They can tell the game is rigged, and that is no longer okay. Some of them are even beginning to grasp that democracy is not a spectator sport. But what can they do to level the playing field? For haven't they bought the tickets and in effect enabled the problem? Now the Little Leaguers have struck out again. They are exhausted, yet the game must go on to the bitter end. They know if they let the other team win, it will literally be game over for the planet. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, fans begin to stand up. Are they getting ready to take matters in their own hands? Most have changed their light bulbs. Some drive hybrid and or electric cars. Others have put solar panels on their roofs and geothermal heat exchange in their front yards. A few have even divested their personal portfolios from fossil fuel investments. I began investing socially responsible way when I was here in 2003, thanks to Johan Clausen. Raise your hand, Johan, so people can check you out afterwards. Many of the fans faithfully donate to multiple nonprofit environmental groups, some of which are fielding the players about to go down in defeat. For a full listing of that, I've got a list on the back table of those organizations. But wait, what's that rumbling? People are starting to move up out of their seats here in the park and off their couches at home. And their moving is becoming a movement, a people's climate movement. And it's gearing up to converge in New York on September 21st in time for the Emergency Climate Summit the UN Secretary General has called. Hundreds upon thousands of people from around the country and across the globe are committing to do whatever they can to get our world leaders to lead the world in this climate crisis before the final innings of what looks for sure like a shutout. And down on our metaphoric field, a young girl from Pennsylvania with a fastball clocked at 70 miles per hour is walking towards the pitcher's mound. She is the prodigy of the founder of the actual Little League, a man who back in 1939, while playing catch with his nephews in their backyard, tripped over a tree stump and at that moment decided that kids needed a space to play and a place to play safely. And then he set out to make it happen. I hope you watched the World Series playoffs last weekend. Millions upon millions of children now participate in Little League. Behind her, fresh recruits are coming down to the field from everywhere, ready to infuse new energy into the effort. There are the children from Earth Guardians in Boulder, Colorado, and over there are the elders on my Facebook page. And here come all the groups in between, and from all demographics, occupations, religions, and social media outlets. For this is indeed an all-hand-on-deck moment in human history, when the political and the personal are truly conjoined, the private and the public are interconnected. And in our faith movement, the seventh principle commits us to respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And I remind you that in our Unitarian heritage, nearly every one of Emerson's transcendentalist cohorts were engaged in social activism, and that Henry David Thoreau's vision of how the world could be, honed in solitude at Walden Pond, led to his act of civil disobedience in protest of the Mexican War that launched our sense of manifest destiny. We are now at a place in our international destiny when civil disobedience is looming large as a last-ditch strategy. In fact, somewhere around 20,000 of us have trained up to stop the XL Keystone Pipeline, and on my desk in Vegas sits a sign that reads, "A real friend will come and bail you out of jail. A true friend will be sitting beside you saying, 'Damn, that was fun.'" No one wants to get arrested, get labeled as an eco-terrorist for trying to save the planet, or called a watermelon, green on the outside and red on the inside. Who needs that? But what is at stake here is nothing less than the fate of the earth and all its inhabitants. Climate change is the greatest challenge our species has ever faced, and if we continue our suicidal, homicidal, ecocidal behavior, the earth will surely shuck us off as a failed evolutionary experiment, and all that will remain is our fossilized bones, a few layers above that of the dinosaurs.